Hi there, I'm Lorraine. After our family reunion, I got home, opened my banking app, and everything was gone. Not stolen by strangers. My own father took it. When I confronted him, he just shrugged and said, "We needed it." But that wasn't the worst part. Turns out, this wasn't a one-time mistake. It was years of silent manipulation, fake emergencies, loans in my name, even teaching my niece to lie. And for the longest time I stayed quiet, because they were family. But now I wonder, how many times did I mistake love for loyalty? The smell of charcoal and overcooked ribs still clung to my shirt as I stepped out of my parents' house and into the thick Boise heat. It was that kind of family reunion, the kind where everyone hugs too hard, asks too much, and gives too little. My mom had spent the afternoon gliding around with her signature wine glass like it was a trophy, pretending everyone loved each other. My dad, Ricky, mostly sat with the TV on mute, occasionally grunting out his opinion about politics or the price of gas. And Darlene? She was in rare form. "You probably make 6 figures now, right?" she blurted between bites of potato salad. "God must be nice." I laughed it off because that's what I always do. That's what keeps the peace. But something about the way she said it, sharp, loud, as if she wanted the whole backyard to hear, stuck in my chest like a splinter. By the time I got to my car, I could feel a headache building right behind my eyes. My father gave me a half-hearted wave and said, "Drive safe, Lorraine. Don't forget you're the lucky one in this family." I didn't respond. I just smiled tight and started the engine. On the drive home, the sky was still glowing from the last stretch of sunset, but the heat hadn't let up. The air conditioning felt like a blessing, but my mind wouldn't shut off. I kept hearing his voice. "You're the lucky one." As if luck had anything to do with why I was the only one who hadn't borrowed money, tanked their credit, or moved back in with our parents after 40. I got home just after 8:30, kicked off my shoes, tossed my purse on the kitchen counter, and instinctively opened my laptop. Checking my account balance had become second nature, a mix of anxiety and habit after a lifetime of being the responsible one. I wasn't prepared for what I saw. The screen loaded. My checking account showed $87.16. I blinked, hit refresh, same number. Yesterday, I had just over $14,000 in there. I had transferred a bonus check from work. I remembered double-checking the deposit. I refreshed the page again. Still $87.16. My hand started to tremble. I opened the transaction history. 3 large transfers had gone through since Friday, each for thousands, and all originating from a familiar IP address. My parents' Wi-Fi, the same one I had connected to during the reunion. A chill ran down my spine. My fingers hovered over the trackpad as if they could reverse it by pausing, as if staring long enough might bring the money back. My breath got shallow. I muttered to myself, "No, no way, he wouldn't, not Dad." But deep down, something cracked, like a curtain finally lifting. The signs had always been there. A week before the reunion, Darlene had called, voice shaking and tearful. "Lori, I hate asking, but the girls need supplies for school. I'm tapped out. Just $300, please?" I wired it to her within 10 minutes. 2 days later, she posted a selfie on Instagram, nails freshly done, holding a mimosa. Self-care Sunday. Another post showed a brunch spread that could have fed a family of 5. The caption said, "Treat yourself." I remembered staring at my phone, a pit forming in my stomach. But I didn't say anything. I told myself maybe someone else paid. Maybe she deserved a break. But now the pieces were rearranging themselves. I sat at my dining table staring at the screen. My apartment was quiet except for the soft hum of the fridge and the blood rushing in my ears. I hadn't even taken off my jacket. I scrolled through old mental files, memories I had buried under politeness. The time I covered her rent, just for 1 month. The time Dad's battery died, and I handed over $200 without blinking. The time Mom said, "You've always been good with money. Not everyone's like that." No one asked. They just assumed I'd help, that I should help, that I existed to help. And suddenly, that $87.16 meant something more than missing money. It meant they never saw me. Not really. I whispered aloud, "They didn't even ask." I stared at the balance again. No one had called to warn me. No one had said, "Hey, we're in a bind." No one even pretended this was a shared decision. Just 3 emptying clicks, and the life I'd been quietly building drained out of me. I stood slowly, grabbed my coat again. My body moved before my brain did. I didn't call, I didn't text. I just grabbed my keys and walked out. I was going back. Tonight. The drive back to my parents' house was short, just under 20 minutes. But it felt longer under the weight of everything I couldn't yet explain. Streetlights flickered above me as I turned into their quiet neighborhood. I passed the same white picket fences, the same trimmed hedges, and it hit me how many times I'd made this same drive. Birthdays, holidays, emergencies that weren't mine. This time, it was me who needed answers. The porch light was still on when I pulled into the driveway. Their living room window glowed with a soft bluish hue. Dad probably watching the news with the volume too low to hear anything. I rang the bell once. Pamela opened the door, wine glass still in hand, her eyebrows raised, but her tone light. "Well, that was fast. Did you forget something, sweetheart?" "No," I said, stepping inside. "We need to talk, now." The house smelled like warm leftovers and fabric softener. Familiar, disarming. That was their trick. Make everything look normal on the outside, so you feel crazy for knowing it's not. Ricky barely turned his head from the couch. Darlene was stretched out on the armchair, scrolling on her phone like this was any other Sunday night. I didn't sit down. I stood in the middle of the room and said it. "My bank account is empty. Gone. All of it." Ricky didn't blink. Darlene didn't pause. Pamela frowned, tilted her head. "Oh, Lorraine, don't be so dramatic." I stared at her. "I'm not being dramatic, I'm being robbed." That got Ricky's attention. He took a sip of his beer and finally looked at me. "We needed it." I blinked. Darlene sighed like I had just inconvenienced her. "You're seriously going to throw a fit over money? You don't have a mortgage, no kids, no one depending on you." Pamela chimed in gently. "They were struggling, honey. Sometimes things happen. We didn't want to ask." "You didn't ask," I snapped. "You just took." Ricky shrugged, like that made sense. "You've always helped before. What's different now?" I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. "I helped because I chose to, not because you stole from me." "You're blowing this out of proportion," Darlene said, finally setting her phone down. "It's not like we ran off to Vegas. We paid bills, groceries, rent, survival." Pamela sat on the edge of the recliner and sighed, like I'd accused her of something unthinkable. "It's just money, Lorraine." "No," I said, voice low. "It's trust, and you broke it." The room went quiet for a beat too long. Then Ricky said, "You didn't say we couldn't." I stared at him, blinking hard. "Because I didn't know I had to." Darlene rolled her eyes. "Maybe next time don't leave your login info open on the family computer. I mean, that's kind of on you." There it was, that casual cruelty, that entitlement dressed up like logic. I glanced around the room. No one looked ashamed, no one apologized. They just looked annoyed, like I was making things uncomfortable for daring to care that they emptied my savings. They'd taken the money. Now they wanted to take the narrative, too. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. Instead, I turned, grabbed my purse, and walked to the door. Ricky called after me. "So that's it? You're just leaving?" I didn't even glance back. "This isn't a misunderstanding," I said. "It's theft." And none of them tried to stop me. I stepped into the night air, the silence louder than any argument. As I walked to my car, the question looped in my head like a song I couldn't turn off. How long have they seen me as their backup plan? By the time I got home, the city had already gone quiet. Boise after dark was always oddly still, like it was trying to keep its secrets. I parked in the usual spot, entered the building, and rode the elevator in silence. It was close to 11 p.m. when I walked into my apartment and locked the door behind me. I didn't even turn on the lights. I dropped my purse on the counter, kicked off my shoes, and stood in the middle of my kitchen with a blank stare. I wasn't tired. I wasn't even angry, not yet. I just needed silence, and it gave me too much. After a few minutes, I opened my laptop, not really knowing why. Maybe part instinct, part compulsion. The screen lit up, still open to my bank dashboard from earlier. $87.16. It hadn't changed. Of course it hadn't. I minimized the tab and opened my email. Search, payment confirmation. 100 results flooded the inbox. Rent payments, Zelle transfers, Amazon orders I never made, flights I never took. I began scrolling, and the deeper I went, the more a pattern started to emerge. And then I found it. 2 years ago. A collection notice from a credit card company I didn't recognize. I had assumed it was junk back then and tossed it. But tonight, I clicked into the details. The card was opened in my name, my address. But the purchases didn't match my life. Luxury candles, streaming services I never used, grocery delivery from a zip code across town, and one of the first charges? A new iPad, shipped to Darlene's apartment. I remembered calling the company trying to dispute the account. The rep asked if I'd authorized the application. No, I said. I never applied for this. The investigation traced the application IP to one address, my parents' house. The same IP that drained my checking account last weekend. I confronted Darlene. She didn't even deny it. It was a temporary thing, she'd said, sipping iced coffee like this was just another Tuesday. You weren't even using your credit. I figured it wouldn't hurt anything. I paid the balance to shut it down. Then I buried it, like always. Back then, I told myself it was a fluke, a bad judgment call. Family does stupid things sometimes. But now I wasn't so sure. I sat down slowly, pulled my hoodie over my knees, and clicked into my photo folder titled Family. Scrolling through birthdays, holidays, blurry selfies from over the years, I remembered the second hit. 6 months ago, a phone call at midnight. Darlene sobbing. Lori, it's Addison. She's really sick. Pneumonia. I don't have enough to cover the urgent care copay. Please. I'd sent $600 that night. No hesitation. 3 days later, Addison posted a TikTok from Lake Tahoe, dancing in a hotel robe, spinning in circles with her cousin by the pool. I called Darlene and asked, Wait, was she even sick? Her answer burned into my brain. Oh my God, you're always so suspicious. We just needed a break. Sorry we didn't clear it with you, Miss IRS. I didn't respond. I didn't demand it back. I just went quiet again. I don't know what was worse, that she lied or that I had believed her so easily. I looked around my apartment. The place felt smaller now, like the walls were closing in with every memory I had tried to forget. I opened a blank spreadsheet. Category, rent paid for others. Amount, $800. Category, Darlene's car battery. Amount, $250. Category, emergency, school supplies. Amount, $300. I kept typing. Cell phone bills, surprise birthday parties, gift cards, vet bills that weren't mine. I stared at the total. I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear. This had never been about one moment. It had never been about a single betrayal. It was a system. A quiet, manipulative running tab no one thought I'd ever question. I clicked Save As and typed the file name, Family Debt, Do Not Ignore. I sat back, feeling the weight shift inside my chest. This wasn't just money, it was respect, and they'd taken that too. 2 days passed. I didn't hear a word from them. Not a single text, not a voicemail, no apology, no defense. The silence felt tactical, like they were waiting for me to simmer down and pretend it never happened. But I wasn't the same woman they thought they could wear down. It was Thursday when I printed out every piece of evidence. Bank statements, credit alerts, identity reports. I slid the stack into a clean black folder, then set it on my kitchen table beside my keys. I stared at it for a full minute. It felt heavier than it was, like it carried every favor I never agreed to, every dollar I never offered, every time they mistook me for a doormat. By 6:45 that evening, I was parking across the street from my parents' house. I didn't pull into the driveway like usual. I wasn't here for dinner. I wasn't here for smiles. I was here for the truth. I stepped out, folder tucked under my arm. The grass was still damp from afternoon sprinklers. A breeze rattled the wind chimes hanging by their porch. I rang the bell once. Pamela answered, face drawn and unsure. You didn't say you were coming, she murmured. I'm not here to eat. She stepped aside without asking anything more. Ricky sat on the couch, reclined with a soda in hand. ESPN was playing at low volume. Darlene was in the corner chair, legs curled beneath her, scrolling like always. I didn't bother with greetings. I dropped the folder on the coffee table. The slap of it hitting the surface made Ricky flinch. "What's that?" he asked. "Proof," I said. "And the last time I'll explain anything." He chuckled, more annoyance than humor. "You're still on about that account?" "No," I replied calmly. "Now it's about all of them." I opened the folder and pulled the first page free. "Remember this? You co-signed a personal loan 18 months ago using my name. I didn't sign this." Ricky blinked. "You left your social on that tax form. I needed it. Fast. So you committed fraud and used my identity without asking." He didn't respond. Pamela stood in the doorway, arms crossed tightly. Her eyes said it all. She'd known. "We helped you," Ricky said. "We put food on your plate when you were in school. Paid for your books. You think all that came free?" "I've repaid you 10 times over," I snapped. "With silence. With rent when you were short. With gifts you never earned. You used me because I didn't fight back." Darlene finally looked up. "Oh, please. This whole victim act is exhausting. You act like we stole your soul." "No," I said, my voice sharp. "You stole something far more practical. My name, my future, my peace of mind." Ricky waved me off. "Don't act like you're some saint. We all do what we have to for family." I held up another document, co-signature verification. "I'm giving you 48 hours to fix this with the bank. Remove my name. Own it, or I report it." "You wouldn't," Pamela whispered. I met her gaze. "You want to bet on that?" Darlene stood, mouth twisting. "You're being cold, heartless even. What happened to us looking out for each other?" "What happened," I said, stepping toward the door, "is that you thought looking out for each other meant I never got to look out for myself." I grabbed the folder, tucked it under my arm again. Ricky tried one last time. "So what now? You gonna take your own family to court?" "If you ever use my name again," I said flatly, "I'll use yours. In court. On paper. On the record." No one spoke. As I pulled the front door open, I didn't look back. "You think guilt's going to keep me quiet?" I said loud enough to echo down the hallway. "Try me." Then I left, the door slamming shut behind me, not in rage, but in resolve. It had been a quiet week. Too quiet. No emails, no voicemails, no knocks at the door. I thought maybe, just maybe, they were letting it go. But on Saturday night, at exactly 8:03 p.m., a text lit up my phone from Pamela. "Lunch at 1 tomorrow. Just us. Let's talk like family." "Just us" had always been code for, "Let's sweep this under the rug without outsiders watching." I should have ignored it. But part of me needed to hear what their next excuse would be. So I charged my laptop, printed 3 things, and placed them in a manila envelope. Not as evidence. Not anymore. As closure. Sunday was warm, too warm for anything serious to happen. And yet, there I was, walking up the steps of my parents' porch at 12:59 p.m., envelope in hand, notepad of patience completely empty. The front door creaked open before I could knock. Pamela stood there in her apron, her hair curled like it was Easter brunch. "You came," she said, her smile stiff. "I did." The dining table was already set. 4 places. I guess just us meant them plus me again. Ricky looked up from his chair and gave me a small nod, like we were meeting for a board meeting instead of a reckoning. Darlene didn't say anything, just sipped from a glass of sweet tea, tapping her acrylics against the stem. I didn't sit. "We thought this would be a chance to reset," Pamela began, placing a dish of rolls in the center of the table, "to clear the air." "Clear it or twist it?" I asked. Ricky leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Look, none of us handled things perfectly, but dragging this out? It's just hurting everyone, especially you." "Hurting me?" I said. "You emptied my account and used my identity, but I'm the one making it worse?" "We're trying to move on," Pamela added, like this was a family disagreement over a burnt casserole and not financial fraud. Darlene finally spoke. "We don't want to fight, Lorraine. What's done is done. Let's not let money come between us." That was their version of peace. No apology, no ownership, just pressure to pretend. I sat down slowly, placing the envelope on my plate like it was part of the setting. "Funny you say that," I said, "because I ran into Aunt Debbie yesterday at the grocery store. She asked if I was still being as generous as always. Pamela's smile cracked for half a second. She said, I continued, that you told her I offered to cover Darlene's bills, that I was just being my usual big-hearted self. Pamela didn't respond. I pulled out the printout and slid it across the table. A screenshot. A message thread from her phone. One she hadn't deleted from the cloud. Her text to Aunt Debbie, dated 2 days after I confronted them. She's overreacting. She offered to help. It wasn't like we took it without her knowing. Silence dropped like a curtain. I looked at all of them. Let me be clear, I said. I didn't offer anything. You stole from me, and now you're lying to other people about it, to protect your image. Darlene scoffed. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I turned to her. No, you just got too comfortable thinking I'd never say anything. I stood. This is your last chance. After today, I go public. I go legal. I go wherever I need to so this doesn't happen again, to me or anyone else. I pulled a sealed envelope from my purse and set it on the table. The name of my attorney printed neatly in the return address corner. A cease and desist, I said, effective immediately. Pamela's hand hovered above it, but she didn't touch it. Ricky leaned forward like he might speak, then didn't. I stepped back from the table. No more backdoor conversations, no more stories to family, no more guilt trips. No one stopped me. I left the roast untouched, the tea full, the table full of people who had run out of lies they could hide behind. I didn't even turn around when the door shut behind me. I just kept walking down the front steps, onto the driveway, and back into my car. I sat there for a while, staring out the windshield, my hands motionless on the steering wheel. Not because I was unsure of what I'd done, because I wasn't, but because the silence afterward hurt more than I'd expected. The engine clicked softly as it cooled, a mocking quiet. They didn't chase me. They didn't yell. They didn't apologize. Just sat there, stunned, like I'd done something cruel. I drove home, showered, and let the rest of the evening pass without turning on the TV or checking my phone. The roast smell still clung to my clothes, like fake comfort. I tossed everything into the laundry basket, locked the apartment door behind me, and for once, I didn't dream at all. The next morning, I made coffee and opened my laptop. Nothing from them. No missed calls. Just a lingering bitter taste in my mouth and the sound of my email refreshing. I tried to move on with my day. I really did. I cleaned my desk, organized files, even watered the succulents I usually forgot about. But the stillness was loud and heavy. By late afternoon, I agreed to watch Addison, Darlene's daughter, for a couple hours while she met with someone from her new job agency. Addison was dropped off with her usual hug and tablet in hand. She's all yours, Darlene chirped from the hallway. Thanks, sis. Sis. The word landed differently now. While Addison colored quietly at my kitchen table, I sat beside her to check the weather on her tablet. Just for a moment. The screen was already unlocked. A messenger window blinked in the background. Notifications piled in the corner. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. The group chat name was Carver Core. It had every name you'd expect: Darlene, Pamela, Ricky, even a cousin or two. At first it was family jokes, memes, baby photos. Then a thread caught my eye. Darlene. She's seriously lost it, like paranoid level nuts. Pamela. She was always sensitive. This is just her being dramatic again. Ricky. Girl gets a good job and thinks she's Queen of Idaho. We should have never let her go to college. And then, laughing emojis. From all of them. I sat frozen, scrolling. The messages dated back weeks. Weeks of mockery, while I was breaking inside trying to understand what I'd done wrong. Screenshots. I took them all, quietly, deliberately. My fingers didn't even shake. I locked the tablet and handed it back to Addison, who smiled like nothing in the world was wrong. They're not who you think they are, I whispered to myself. That evening, I made an appointment. The next morning, I sat across from my lawyer in his downtown office. His glasses rested on the edge of his nose as he read through the documents I handed him. The unauthorized loan, the group chat screenshots, the fake gifts they told people I'd offered. He looked up, brows raised. You're ready to move forward? I nodded. No more warnings. Draft everything. And the scope? He asked. All of them. Ricky, Pamela, Darlene. I want every single name tied to this mess addressed. Fraud, identity misuse, emotional coercion, financial abuse. He closed the folder, leaned back in his chair, and said the first calm thing I'd heard in weeks. You have a case, and it's airtight. As I stepped out of the building, the early afternoon sun hit me hard. It was too bright for the mood I was in. I stood there for a moment, letting the warmth sting. My phone buzzed. One new text, from Darlene. Did you seriously just subpoena Mom? I stared at the screen for a moment, then turned the phone off without replying. I walked down the street and didn't look back. It was 3 days after I walked out of my lawyer's office when the knock came. I wasn't expecting company. I wasn't expecting her. Addison stood at my door, backpack slung over one shoulder, her curls pulled into a messy ponytail, one shoelace dragging behind her. Hi, Aunt Lorraine, she chirped. Mom said I'm sleeping over tonight. I blinked. Darlene hadn't texted, hadn't called, just dropped her off. Again. Did she say when she'd be back? Nope, Addison said brightly. She said I could stay as long as you want me. It wasn't the first time Darlene treated me like unpaid childcare, but this time felt different. Strategic. Like she knew I'd be less likely to take legal steps while babysitting her daughter. I let Addison in. We baked cookies. Watched reruns of The Great British Bake Off. She giggled every time a contestant dropped something. For a moment, it almost felt normal, until it didn't. She held up her tablet while licking a spoon and said casually, Mom said not to tell you about the iPad. My hand paused over the cookie tray. What do you mean? She said Grandma bought it. But really, Mom got it with the card she keeps hidden. The one she said came from you. My heart stopped. She also said not to talk about my new phone, Addison added, licking frosting from her finger. Mom said it's better if you think it's a gift. I stared at her, at that sweet, honest face, and felt my stomach twist. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about shaping a child into a mirror of her mother's lies. That night, when Addison fell asleep on my couch with crumbs on her shirt and Frozen still playing softly in the background, I stood in the kitchen staring at the ceiling. Darlene wasn't just reckless. She was rewriting her daughter's sense of right and wrong. The next morning, I drove straight to my mother's house. Pamela answered the door, surprised to see me. Before she could speak, I said, Is Darlene here? She hesitated. She's in the kitchen. I walked in without waiting for permission. Darlene sat at the counter, sipping coffee like nothing was wrong. I know what you told Addison. She didn't flinch. What are you talking about? About the iPad, the phone, the credit card. You made her lie to me. Her eyes narrowed. She doesn't know how to keep her mouth shut, does she? I stepped closer. She's 10, Darlene. She's not your shield. She's not your cover story. You're teaching her that lying is how you survive. You're poisoning her. Don't bring my kid into this, she snapped, voice sharp and low. You brought her in the moment you dragged her into your web of lies. Pamela stepped between us, hands raised. Girls, this isn't helping anything. I turned to her. It should help, but you're still pretending this isn't serious. Ricky emerged from the hallway, already defensive. This is all going too far. You're breaking this family over some cash and bad choices. You don't get to use the word family, I said, shaking. Not after what you did with my name. Not after you laughed at me behind my back. Not after Darlene weaponized her own daughter. Pamela's voice cracked. Lorraine, this is family. No, I said, stepping back, voice cold and steady. This is abuse, and I'm done pretending it's not. I handed Pamela a document, another notice. Final. Legal. Binding. This was filed 2 days ago. All 3 of you are named. What happens next is no longer my decision. It's in the court's hands. Darlene's face paled for the first time. I swear you're acting like we killed someone, she whispered. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. As I turned to leave, I looked back at her one last time. If they won't stop you, I said, the court will. She didn't move. Neither did Pamela. Ricky folded his arms, but for once said nothing. And as I stepped out into the cold morning air, I realized something powerful. They weren't scared of losing me. Until now. The quiet didn't arrive with fireworks or fanfare. It didn't come in the form of an apology, a confrontation, or even a last-ditch effort to guilt me back into place. It just happened. like a light slowly dimming in a room I no longer wanted to be in. It had been 2 weeks since I walked out of my mother's house for what I told myself, what I knew, was the last time. I hadn't packed much, just a duffel bag, my documents, and my dignity, which, up until that moment, had been chipped away piece by piece for years. I didn't slam the door, I didn't look back, I didn't give them the satisfaction of a final argument. I simply left. And then came the silence, not peaceful, not relieving, not at first. It was the kind of silence that presses against your chest in the middle of the night and asks, "What now?" No missed calls. No voicemails laced with that performative hurt my mother was so good at faking. No vague texts from my father pretending like he didn't know why I was upset. Just absence. Like they had collectively decided I no longer existed. I thought I was prepared for backlash, a barrage of accusations, maybe even a visit at work or a letter in the mail accusing me of tearing the family apart. I braced myself for emotional blackmail, for teary, "How could you do this?" messages from my sisters. But the silence? That was something else entirely. It wasn't just quiet. It was calculated. It took me a few days to understand it for what it was, punishment. This was their way of showing me what life without them looked like, their way of reminding me who had the power. But what they didn't realize was that this silence, this vast, echoing emptiness, wasn't hurting me the way they thought it would. If anything, it was clarifying. Every evening I came home from work, kicked off my heels by the door, and slipped into something soft and loose. I'd light a candle, brew tea, open my laptop and check the latest updates from my lawyer. I was neck deep in the legal mess left behind, untangling the web of lies they'd spun with my name on credit applications, my signature forged on loan agreements, my financial reputation used and discarded like an old receipt. It was exhausting. But it was mine. My fight. My choice. Then one afternoon, as I was clearing out my spam folder, half focused, half bored, I saw it. Subject: "For what it's worth from Marcy, my cousin, the quiet one, the one who always kept her eyes low during family dinners, who never raised her voice, never rocked the boat." I clicked before I could overthink it. "Lorraine, I don't expect a reply, but I want you to know, you did the right thing. I've watched this family chew you up for years. They never saw you as a person, just a provider. Watching you finally stand up wasn't just brave. It gave me permission to rethink my silence too. Whatever they say about you now, I know the truth." I read it once, then again, then a third time, and I broke. Not out of rage, not from pain, but from the relief of being seen, of someone finally naming the thing I'd carried for so long. I cried like I hadn't in years. Not the hot, panicked sobbing of someone in crisis. It was quieter than that, like a letting go, like exhaling after holding your breath too long. A few days later, I got a letter from the bank. My name had been officially removed from the fraudulent loan my father opened. Another letter arrived the next morning. An internal investigation had been launched into Darlene's, my sister's, accounts. Suspicious transfers. Duplicate beneficiaries. My mother's name appeared in the case file notes. Willful omission, they called it. She knew. Of course she knew. And still, not a word, not a call, not even an attempt to justify it. I thought that would be the most painful part. The betrayal, the exposure, the way the truth unraveled in front of strangers in suits with clipboards. But no, the hardest part was their complete lack of remorse. They didn't deny it. They just dismissed me. Like I was the one who'd done something unforgivable. One night I found myself sitting cross-legged on the floor of my apartment, a half-empty glass of wine beside me, sorting through old photo albums I'd brought with me but never opened. Snapshots of what used to be, birthdays, Christmas mornings. My niece in a pumpkin costume, her gummy grin making me laugh despite myself. I didn't throw them out. I wasn't angry like that anymore, but I didn't need them close either, so I slid them gently into a box, taped it shut, and placed it in the back of my closet. I wasn't erasing the past. I just wasn't going to carry it with me anymore. That Sunday, I woke early. The kind of early where the sky is still gray, and the world hasn't decided what kind of day it's going to be yet. I brewed coffee, pulled a blanket around my shoulders, and stepped out onto my small porch. The breeze was cool. The trees swayed lazily. A few birds chirped like they didn't have a care in the world. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of anyone else's expectations. No demands, no guilt, no tightrope to walk, just me. I took a deep breath, let it fill my lungs, and whispered into the quiet, "You can't miss what was never real." Behind me from the kitchen, my phone buzzed. A single new voicemail, from Pamela. I didn't rush to play it, let it wait. For once, I wasn't the one chasing closure. 3 months later, I was somewhere new. Not just geographically, though technically I'd crossed state lines, but emotionally, mentally, entirely. Eugene, Oregon wasn't all that different from Boise on paper. Similar weather, similar landscape. The same kind of trees, the same overcast skies that hinted at rain without ever quite delivering. But the air felt different here. Not just cleaner, but quieter. Like it had decided not to carry other people's expectations anymore. The street I lived on was unremarkable in the best way. Rows of small houses, neighbors who waved but didn't pry, and trees lining the sidewalks that had just begun to shed their golden leaves. I watched them fall from my second-story apartment window most mornings, slow and steady, like the world itself was learning how to let go, and maybe in some way it was. I worked out of a small co-working space just 2 blocks away. Nothing fancy. White walls, too many plants, and a playlist that alternated between lo-fi beats and soft acoustic covers of songs no one wanted to admit they still liked. There was a coffee shop across the street, and within 2 weeks, the baristas already knew my name and my order. Oat milk latte, no syrup. Life had become simple in a way I never thought was allowed. My mornings were no longer filled with passive-aggressive text messages or frantic phone calls. No last-minute errands for someone else's mess. No drama dressed up as obligation. Instead, I woke up to sunlight crawling through my curtains. I stretched. I breathed. I made breakfast slowly. I worked without dread. I ended my days without needing to brace for an emotional ambush. But not every day was light. Some mornings still came with a strange, hollow ache. Not panic. Those days were over. And not fear, exactly. It was softer than that. Like a healed wound remembering the shape of the knife. That morning, the air was cold enough to make me reach for a sweatshirt. I poured a second cup of coffee, then stood still for a moment. The world was quiet. But inside, something stirred. And that's when I remembered it. The voicemail. The one I never played. I hadn't deleted it. I hadn't forgotten it, not really. I just postponed it. Buried it in a drawer with old receipts and half-used notebooks. But now, for some reason, I needed to hear it. Not for closure, just to stop wondering. I sat on the edge of the bed, the ceramic mug warming my fingers, and unlocked my phone. There it was, buried under newer messages from utilities and newsletters I never read. I pressed play. Pamela's voice came through, quiet, hesitant, like she didn't trust herself to say what she needed to. "Lorraine, I didn't know it would go this far. We never meant to hurt you, we always assumed you'd be there. You always were." A pause. Not long. Just enough space for me to realize she wasn't calling to apologize. "Your sister's not doing well. This has all been hard. Can't we just stop this?" There it was. Not remorse. Not even recognition. Just a gentle nudge back toward silence. Toward pretending. I didn't hesitate. I hit delete. The sound it made, a single clean click, was more satisfying than I expected. Like shutting a door. Like locking it. Like finally choosing not to let someone back in. Later that week, a plain white envelope showed up in my mailbox. No return address. The handwriting on the front was tidy, careful, not familiar. Inside, a check for $1,200 and a small folded note. "I know we've never spoken much, but I saw what happened. You stood up when the rest of us shut up. Years ago, you paid for things my brother should have handled. I never said thank you, so here's a piece of it. Late. You were brave. Kelly, Darlene's ex-husband's sister." I held the check between my fingers, stunned. Not by the money, though it was generous, but by the word, brave. No one in my family had ever used that word about me, I was always responsible, reliable, selfish when I stopped being those things. But brave? That felt like the truth finally finding its voice. I didn't deposit the check right away. I left it on the windowsill above my kitchen sink, where the sun could fade the ink a little more each day. It wasn't about the money. It was about the fact that someone had seen the price I'd paid and acknowledged it. That night, I sat at my desk with a blank sheet of paper. Not typing, not texting, just a pen and the page. I didn't address it to anyone. Not my mother. Not Pamela. Not even Kelly. I wrote it for myself. You don't owe silence to anyone who harms you, not even if they share your last name. Not even if they once tucked you in at night. You have every right to leave. You are not a villain for protecting your peace. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in the drawer of my nightstand. Not as a keepsake, as a reminder. Later, I stepped out onto my small balcony with a mug of tea. The sky was turning that deep lavender shade right before it gives in tonight, the kind of dusk that makes everything feel possible. I stood there, wrapped in a sweater, the steam rising in lazy spirals from my cup. No noise, no tension, no need to explain myself, just stillness. I sipped slowly, letting the warmth settle into my chest. No regrets, no revenge, just release. And then, as the rooftops blurred into silhouette and the last light sank below the trees, I whispered something I hadn't dared to say out loud. Not until now. I didn't lose a family. I lost a cage. And as I watched the breeze move through the trees like a quiet tide, I let the final thread of guilt unravel and disappear into the wind. Some people think family means forever. I used to believe that too, but here's what I've learned. Being related doesn't give someone the right to harm you. Love without respect is just control wrapped in guilt, and silence, no matter how noble it feels at first, only teaches others how far they can push you. I didn't walk away because I stopped loving them. I walked away because I started loving myself more. To anyone watching who's ever felt like a doormat for family, or been told to just let it go, you're not wrong for drawing a line. Boundaries are not betrayal, they're survival. And if this story hit something in you, maybe a memory, maybe a wound, I want you to know this. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to choose yourself. Even if it means walking alone for a while, it's better than walking wounded forever. Now, let me ask you something real. Have you ever had to choose peace over family? Do you believe loyalty has limits? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. And if this story touched you even just a little, hit that 1 in the comments, so I know you felt it too. And hey, if you want more stories like this, more moments that make you think, feel, and maybe even heal a little, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one.